isolated by floodwaters tonight. The floods ring Sydney to the south and west after storms that dumped up to 200 millimetres or 9 inches of rain during the day. The city's transport is in chaos, with major highways and rail links cut and other roads.
This road behind me is the only road in and the only road out. Only an hour and a half ago it was passable. Then in about half an hour the water came. It's now about 2 metres deep out in the middle, and police expect it's going to rise at least another metre or a metre and a half.
There were 2 caravan parks adversely affected, Hollywood Drive Caravan Park and the Magic Kingdom Caravan Park. When we informed Hollywood Drive of the pending flood disaster that was heading in their direction, they instantly removed their caravans to higher grounds. Magic Kingdom, in us giving them the same information, 2/3 of the caravans were removed, 1/3 said that they felt they'd be safe. That did not occur. The 2 metres of water did rise in that area also, and next thing we did get an urgent call from the caravan park saying, look, we need to be evacuated, it is flooding. The SES instantly responded, and in working completely with those in the caravan park, the SES was successful in removing all the community members to safer grounds, and there was no loss of life.
Kathy Kemp was left stranded in her van with a broken hip. Her husband Dave had to swim out to raise the alarm.
Just coming in the door as when the policeman got Kath out, and it was still rushing in.
You look at all your gear and you think it's going to be wiped out.
The caravan park residents at Landsvale knew the floodwaters were coming, but no one was ready for the water level to rise as fast as it did.
I'm the Secretary Treasurer of the East Fairfield Progress Association, which has been heavily hooked up in that flood-prone situation in Fairfield. And before that I was the President of the South West Region Flood Action Group, which led a delegation down to Canberra. Some of the projects that Fairfield's done have been excellent. Hyden Park would be one of the classic examples. Hyden Park was flood-prone. They couldn't get the people out of Hyden Park to Fairfield, and the East Fairfield Progress Association housed them for the night in our hall. The history of Fairfield goes way back with flooding. There's records of Sir Henry Parkes living in the district and had to move out of the district after he was flooded at Landsvale and then at Canley Vale. And flooding is very much part of Fairfield. We had major floods in 56, 86 and in 88. And there's no doubt in the world we'll flood again.
I clearly remember the afternoon of the 88 floods, really. We were sitting here in Council Building having a meeting with the Commonwealth about a grant program, and the room actually doesn't have windows. So it was a fairly intense discussion, and we thought we could hear some thunder, and we left probably about 5 o'clock and we walked out and there was nobody in the building. Absolutely nobody in the building. Everybody had heard the flood alert or the potential storm alert and had left. The floodwaters had risen so much that we weren't going to be able to leave this building.
How would you say that flood compared to the 86 flood?
Much worse than 86. It rose dramatically, much quicker and much higher than the 86 flood.
Why do you say it rose much higher? How can you tell?
Oh, you can tell just by the certain flood level. I copped it in my place here just across the road, and last time was approximately only a foot through the house. This time it's well over a metre right throughout the home.
And let's say, what about carpet and things like that you replaced in 86?
Well, they did replace in 86 and that's gone again, and they were just picked up by the council yesterday. So not only carpet but all furnishings that was replaced in 86, and it's all gone again. We just managed to get most of the furnishings back together to what it was originally, and it's all gone again. We've had to throw it out. It's all new furnishing just still sitting there now. So,
can you put any costs on how much you might have lost?
Contents alone were up well above 15,000, 20,000, something like that, you know, but it's hard to say. You can't really estimate. Just about every furnishing that you have inside, apart from this time, managed to save the new leather lounge that we bought last time, only because we managed to get it up high enough above the dining room table and just touched the top of the dining room table, the floodwaters, and it just managed to save that.
After the 86 and 88 floods, the government authorities and everybody else tended to realise that flooding just didn't happen in the country, it also happened in the suburbs. And by happening in the suburbs, it affected more people, and the water didn't get away as quickly. So it stayed and just totally ruined whatever chance you had of cleaning anything out. During my time on council, I went to all the flood conferences and tried to get more money along with our council engineers for the flood mitigation works that needed to be done in Fairfield to help alleviate the flooding. In 88, the floods were different to 86. They came up through the Georges River rather than across the Hume Highway, and it flooded in a totally different way. It was a lot faster. The water came up the driveway and we were standing there watching it and trying to stop it with our hands. It was an impossible task, and we realised that we should be inside lifting furniture because that's what we hadn't had a chance to do in 86. So we went in and lifted as many things off the ground as we could and put tables and lounges on. Well, we put the lounges on the tables, we put the chairs on top of the lounges, we emptied the bookshelf onto the bed, we put the bookshelf on top of paint tins. We did as much as we possibly could, and then we realised the water was coming into the house, so we had to leave, and we had to walk along our veranda and down 3 steps without knowing where we were going. So we're feeling our way very, very gently, and as we're coming down our driveway with the water coming up past our knees, we were getting further and further down. It came up to our waist as we got onto our footpath. We had to avoid fences, gates and furniture that was actually floating on the water. A doll's house was coming at me, so I had to push that out of the way. There were tin cans, lots of debris, and spiders walking on the water. And spiders walking on the water, it's not very good because they're coming at you waist height, and it was quite frightening. So I tried to move as fast as I could without tripping down onto the ground, because I'd be in over my head if I'd fallen. So we just had to keep walking as quickly as we could, feeling our way until we got out of the water, and that was quite some way.
I rang my insurance company this morning. They said they haven't got directives from their head offices, but I should imagine it would be the same where we get no assistance from insurance companies. Dead money, dead money.
Can you put any figure on what you might have lost?
At this stage, I may have lost a business through the floods. I'd say in excess of $20,000 worth, easily, with just equipment lost. I've got equipment there that I've only had for a week, 2 weeks. It is totally destroyed by the floods that you cannot save. It's electronic equipment, and the carpet of 8 rooms I've lost. So I'd say in my particular instance, in excess of $20,000. Sitting there destroyed.
So how much you say one of these boxes might be?
They're about $120. They're about somewhere around $500 for that, just that part there alone.
And that's part of an alarm system, which is your business?
That's right, my business going, just about, yeah.
The house raising projects that went on after the 80s floods, it was decided at that time to negotiate with the state and federal governments for funding that people down in Lansvale whose houses were flooded probably nearly up to the ceiling line, that if they wished, with a subsidy from state and federal government, to raise their houses. A lot of people took up that offer and raised their houses. If you go down there and have a look, you'll see they're up about 2 metres or so in the air, some even more, depending on the level of the flood at the time. That was a great project. A lot of people took that up. Council then also had a volunteer purchase of the houses, where we purchased the houses and in some instances demolished those houses and never replaced them and left it as open space where it was flooded. Others, we demolished the houses and then sold the blocks, but with a development application that stated you had to have your house, the new house had to be built at least 2 to 3 metres up in the air. There was also a project, what we called the Restoring the Waters, which was bringing some of our creek systems back to what they were in the 30s and the 40s and the early days of settlement in this area, where a creek would just meander in its own fashion through the paddocks and down into the Lansvale Peninsula. Over the years, with house development in this area, at the time councils and the Water Authority felt it was better to build concrete trenches, and the only thing that this ended up doing was causing the water to run much faster through these concrete trenches and down into the Lansvale area, flooding Lansvale much quicker. With funding from the state government, this project, Restoring the Waters, which won many awards for us, we ripped out the concrete channels and brought the creeks back to aerial photographs that we had from the 30s and the 40s, back to their meandering way that they ran in the old days through the paddocks. which was a tremendous success, not only as far as slowing the water that ran down into Landsvale, but also bringing back the flora and fauna and the fish life that existed.
The telegraph pole out there was the ideal instrument to measure on. Because I am old-fashioned and it's also easier, it's measured in 1 foot increments up to 12 feet, because that's as far as I could reach off the ladder. It's also a lot easier at night with a torch to get half a foot than roughly 1/8 of a metre or whatever. And I can also evaluate how quickly the water is rising and pass that information to the State Emergency Service and let them know, and if necessary they might have to start taking action, evacuating people. The 88 flood was largely at night. From the time it broke the bank at the conjunction there of Prout Creek and Cabramatta Creek, it took 2 hours to reach the peak level, which was 10 feet on that pole.
I used to regularly attend council meetings for about 10 years. I then became involved in things that mattered in my area, such as the 5 Creeks. Council have been very good in as much as they've done what they can. We've had the road raised, voluntary acquisitions, properties in the area and turns it into open space, parks, whatever. Most of Landsvale now has curb and guttering. All the major roads all have footpaths. Any new development that's done has to be built above the known flood level. Everyone's learnt some very serious lessons from that 88 flood, or the 86 and the 88 flood. And since, in those 20 years since then, we've had a lot of people move into the area that have never seen a real flood. You just can't stop nature. The thing is, Landsvale is a peninsula and it's also a basin. We have the Georges River running along the edge of our suburb. The Cabramatta Creek and the Prospect Creek can't flow into it, and this part of Landsvale gets flooded because of the Prospect Creek. It flows over land and virtually meets up with the Georges River. And so we can get flooded from the Georges River and the Prospect Creek, and when both are in flood, it just fills the suburb up. And laws have been put in place. If people won't move out of their house in the time of a dangerous flood, they can be physically removed by the police.
In the Georges River Basin, the flood began receding mid-morning, and locals began tackling the inevitable heartbreaking clean-up. Some 500 homes are reported damaged, and the government has offered financial help with replacing essential goods and clothes. Stock losses are reported minimal so far, although dozens of animals died when floodwaters swept through this Milperra Wildlife Park during the night.
Well, the most important thing that the community can learn from flooding and the information that SES does put out in pamphlets and booklets is that flooding can be very dangerous. Flooding in itself can be made easier by the community working with the SES. Our young children should never play in stormwater drains or any type of moving water. There is a danger factor there at all times. And always take notice of what the SES says. Listen to the radio reports, listen to the TV reports, and whatever SES informs the community to do, please follow those instructions. That not only makes it easier for us, the SES, but will make it much safer for you, the community.